Are you looking for something green and beautiful to gift this holiday season? Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, I promise this is going to be one of possibly the only kind of holiday themed video that I'm going to do on my channel this year. There might be another sneaky one here and there, but I know we've all been bombarded with like the holiday season and we're only just coming into December now. But I do know that a lot of people would like to gift plants to friends or family this holiday season. Now, I have done several previous videos in the past, one where I was talking about some lovely books that you can give people, and then also a kind of gifting guide that you might want to covertly send over to some friends and family, which isn't the obvious things. And I will link both at some point at the very top of this video in case you need to watch those as well. But in this video, I'm not going to go for very obvious picks here. And I'm going to give you a couple of options. I'm going to give you options for the true kind of beginner, somebody who maybe isn't going to get into plant collecting, but might. It's very easy to get bitten by the bug, as we all know. And also something for the collectors out there as well. But overall, I am going to try and keep this as budget friendly as possible, basically, because I know there's a lot of spending and there's not an awful lot of money this year, or possibly for the last few years, actually, bleak as that is. So these things are going to be some things that you can kind of get hopefully relatively easily accessible and also that won't break the bank. Couple of tips that I will say about gifting, especially if you are my usual audience and you are a collector or somebody who has an awful lot of houseplants. First thing is a custom care tag. Because we all know the care tags that come with most of these plants from like the retailers mean bupkis. And also it makes the gift even more thoughtful as well, because if you are somebody who's been growing for a while, and hopefully you maybe even grown some of these plants, you can talk from experience, your own experience. And also if you are giving this to somebody who's relatively close to you, friends or family, you might know a bit more about what their personality type is like and what they are likely to do with this plant that you give it to them. So the care kind of guide that you're going to give it is going to be highly specialized towards them. And obviously do make a point of explaining this to them when you're giving them the gift. The other big tip I would say, again, only if the budget can stretch it, it's a good idea to maybe give them something with a decorative pot, because a lot of the times a plant in just a plastic pot isn't going to be quite as impressive as maybe something with a decorative pot. And or, depending on how you feel, give them something that maybe is self-watering. There's a specific set of friends and family out there that would really benefit from a self-watering pot, even if it's something that's going to be in semi-hydros. That might mean that you're going to need to like pull up your sleeves and do some of the work before you give the gift to them in terms of prepping it for them. Because if it's somebody that's starting off just kind of going, here's some pon or leca and here's our plant and do the semi-hydro thing, go, might be a bit too much to ask. And the biggest tip that I can give you is consider the recipient, consider their personality, what they're likely to be like in terms of care, as I kind of hinted earlier on about the care guide that you're going to give them, what their surroundings are like, what their environment is like, and whether or not they've got kids or pets that might attack some of these plants. But right, let's dive into it. And I have grouped these things together in terms of kind of archetypes. So you'll understand a bit more, but let's dive into the first archetype. Starting off strong, let's go with the Overwaterers. So you can kind of see what the archetypes are going to be a bit like. So for the Overwaterers, if it is somebody who's a beginner, and mine's a bit difficult to pick up, so I will add a picture here for the people that might have never seen one before. Consider something like a Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. And I know the people that have been here for a while will be like, but Overwaterers. I'm just like, yes, however, at least in my personal experience, and some people might disagree, and again, this is where you knowing the recipient and their care and their conditions might come into play here. Rhaphidophora tetrasperma generally tends to be one of those things that will work with a bit of overwatering as well. They tend to be a bit more tolerant of it than a lot of the other kind of houseplants or specifically aroids out there. I mean, for the people that know, they know, but it is a fast growing, it can kind of grow up and kind of either trail or kind of climb up. It looks like something that people are more used to seeing. So it looks a bit, and that's why a lot of times you might get it called the Monstera minima or the mini Monstera. It's not a Monstera, obviously, but it looks like something that they're kind of aware of. And this is the thing, a lot of times people will get people a Monstera, but if they've done well with it, you've just given them a bit of a headache for many years down the line. Is that where am I going to put this beast of a plant? The tetrasperma will kind of do away with some of that worry, basically. And by and large, again, I can talk from experience. I have gifted this to a few people that are overwaterers and also underwaterers as well. This is one that can go into both camps. And it's one of the few plants that they have never managed to kill. So there is something to be said about that. Now, the collector's kind of counterbalance of this would be something like the Epipremnum amplicium. And again, mine is very large here, and I've got the one upstairs in my bathroom. I'll see if I can take a picture of the one in the bathroom. Please be aware that I have co-planted it with a Epipremnum pinnatum, but you should be able to see that plant. This is a plant that has never given me much grief, and it is something different. It is still an Epipremnum, so it's going to be relatively easy to take care of, but out of all of my Epipremnums, this is one that tends to do okay, even if it's slightly overwatered. So it can be quite interesting. I've just got the green version. I think there is a variegated version, and there is also a silver stripe version. As far as I'm aware, both the green version and the silver stripe version isn't particularly expensive and should be relatively easy to find online. You might not find it in all of your plant stores for this one, but again, this is talking more to the collectors. But a quick search online, and again, I can only base it on what I'm seeing here in the UK, and I would imagine Europe, you should be able to find this plant. And somebody who is a collector, this might surprise them. And it's not something that they would necessarily, I don't know that many people that have got the Epipremnum amplicium, and it's a shame. Hopefully this video will change that. Let's come into the underwaterers. So this archetype is people that are super busy, maybe they're not around a lot of the times, the plant watering isn't going to be front of mind for them, they might go away and travel quite a bit on trips, business trips, holidays, all of these things. So you need something that's going to be robust. So for me, it would be, and I'll give you a couple of examples here, it would be most Discidias. So I have grown a couple of Discidias, and I will put both of the plants here so you can kind of see pictures of them, including the names. And they tend to be quite resilient to a bit of underwatering. And this is not the obvious kind of cactus or succulent type plant. This reads more like a traditional house plant. Yes, a lot of the times they do give slight Hoya vibes. And if they keep it particularly happy, it will also bloom for them. So Discidias by and large, not all of them, but by and large, are going to be plants that are going to be happy with somebody who's not around a lot of the time or underwaters them as well. They tend to be tough plants, they handle underwatering quite well, and as long as you give them decent levels of light, and that is something that you might want to give them in the care instructions on this, these plants should be relatively happy for them. And if you want to go the extra mile, let me show you mine, you could potentially even mount it for them. And that's make it quite nice and easy, something they can just put up somewhere on their wall and it will just grow beautifully and trail down for them. It's giving kind of mounted plant vibes, so staghorns, but not a staghorn. Staghorn ferns are also a good idea if you know that the person will be able to take that plant off and water it. And yes, this is for underwaters. Now, for more of the collectors, we're keeping it kind of within the similar kind of broader family. You're going to be looking at Hoyas as a whole, basically. I've got the Hoya querumelens. Is it querumelens? I will add the name at the top there and I will give you a picture here. Very, very cool plant. You might need to do a bit of research on this. If you're in the UK, I know by and large grow tropicals does generally have this plant most of the times in stock, and after my most recent videos I've been able to get my discount code to be a permanent discount code as well, so I'll add it at the top in case you want to get 10% off that order. But this is going to be something that is quite interesting for a lot of the collectors. It might not have the silveriness that a lot of people are really desperately trying to find now in Hoyas. However, and you should be able to see from the picture that I'm going to put here or video of my own one, where I've got it in a south-facing window, this does sun stress beautifully. And actually you're going to be seeing it kind of a bit more faded down to green now because we're getting into like the deeper, darker, colder days of winter now. So it is starting to revert back to a green, but the whole thing was a beautiful sun-stressed red, and it's giving vibes of Hoya sunrise as well. It's very similar, but the leaves are really beautiful. I have always found that the leaves on this plant, hopefully the picture might do it justice or the video, but they are so glossy that they almost kind of reflect some of that light. That it is beautiful, beautiful plant. So super, super underrated as well. And now something for the no humidity homebodies. And by that, I mean people that have got very, very, very dry houses. Either they live somewhere where it's very dry, kind of more desert-like conditions, or it's now the winter and they've constantly got all of their radiators or their heating on full blast, and there's very little humidity in the space. And again, I am not going to go for the obvious kind of cactus and succulents here. I'm going to talk about something like the Thamatophyllum sprucianum, the Philodendron goldii. It used to also be known as the Philodendron goldii. There's also the Thamatophyllum bipinnatifidum, I think, if I'm not mistaken. These are plants that do surprisingly well in slightly lower humidity levels without it being too stressed. The one thing I might say, if you're going to be giving them something like this might be an interesting one to maybe give them in something like a self-watering pot if you want to go the extra mile and put it in something like semi-hydro for them, explain how they can kind of do some watering. They're not particularly fussy plants when it comes into them being in semi-hydro. I have got my Thamatophyllum sprucianum in, I'm kind of looking at it, it's behind the camera there. It is in pond. And a lot of the times I've got water in the reservoir. Sometimes I don't have water in the reservoir. It tends to do really well. Granted, it is in here, but I know from an awful lot of you that have messaged me over the years, this is one that can do exceptionally well in regular household humidity, even slightly lower levels of humidity. And what's not to like about the Thamatophyllums? They've got lush, big foliage, usually quite interesting and unusual, and they tend to do okay in slightly drier conditions. These plants are kind of quite dynamic, but they're also quite forgiving, at least in my experience. Obviously, if your experiences vary from mine, do let us all know down below. We have talked about this plant care and plants, house plants in general. It's not, the concept is not a monolith. It's going to be dependent on where you all are. I can give you the best kind of advice that I can based on the environment that I'm growing in, or at least the part of the world that I'm growing in. One for the collectors that I would say is going to be interesting for this category, the kind of no humidity kind of homebodies, something like a Philodendron Florida Ghost. This is one that a lot of people have wanted over the years. Some people have got it, some people haven't. But this is one that at least I have found in my experience is, again, very forgiving, unusual leaf shape. You do get that, hopefully if they give it enough light, that kind of ghostly, kind of creamy white leaf. If not, they'll just get a slightly more minty color. Some people like that. I wasn't a fan of it in the minty form, but there are people out there that do like minty foliage. So this could be a really interesting one. Super easy to care for. I don't know an awful lot of people that have struggled with the Florida Ghost. And also it is one that I have found, I've had it growing quite happily over radiators. Granted, if it's like 10% humidity, you've probably got other problems in the house if it's only 10% humidity, but that might struggle. But for most low humidity households, at least in my experience, the Florida Ghost is a great option for somebody who's a collector. Now let's move into people that have got high levels of humidity within their house, something like a Magravia. So this is a Magravia Sintenissi, if I'm not mistaken, and I can kind of show you a bit what it looks like there. This can become a very interesting and bushy plant. If you cannot find this exact one, because this might be slightly harder to find, I think the Magravia umbellata is one that looks very similar to this and would appreciate the higher levels of humidity. So think people that might be putting their plant in a bathroom or a kitchen, somewhere that has high levels of humidity, or people that like to go around and mist. We all know that misting the plants doesn't give high levels of humidity, but these are going to be slightly more forgiving of people that have got way too much humidity. If anything, they will thrive within that environment. And I know from most of us that have been plant collecting, this is possibly the easiest of kind of categories, because a lot of the plants that we're growing would all do really, really well in high levels of humidity. To be fair, most of the plants that I've mentioned in this video would do well for high levels of humidity, because ultimately they are all tropical plants. They appreciate higher levels of humidity. And I'm saying this with my entire chest because it's unlikely that most average kind of non-planty people are going to put this in any room that is going to have stupidly high levels of humidity, like 90% and above. The bathrooms, the kitchens and things like that would probably have good enough levels of humidity for plants that would appreciate it, which would be most tropical foliage plants. But for a bit of fun, something like a Magravia would be beautiful. And then something for the collectors out there, and again, so many that I can put on this, but if you see something like this, so this is an anthurium, I was going to say Magravia again. You could get them a Magravia, they'd probably appreciate it actually, it's something that most people don't necessarily have. But something like an anthurium radicans mixed with the luxurians, or luxurians mixed with the radicans, I can never remember which version I have of mine. So part of the reason why I'm showing you this is this plant was struggling. It had lost quite a few of its roots because I wasn't giving it enough light. But I have never seen a more tenacious anthurium that just does not want to die. And it gives you beautiful kind of corrugated leaves. They come in quite shiny. This is a lot easier, in my experience, as well as a lot of other people's, to the kind of more traditional, just pure species of luxurians. This grows a lot faster than a luxurians as well. So this, I think, is a great option for somebody that has got high levels of humidity. This is a plant that will generally do quite well for them, especially if they are a seasoned plant collector. They might not have this one. And this is the biggest caveat that I can give you across all of these when it comes to the plant collectors. I know it might be tricky, but if you cannot ask the plant collector themselves, maybe somebody who's very close to them, either a flatmate, a partner, or somebody who's in that space who might hear them chattering away about plants, ask them, if you don't want to spoil the surprise, ask them if they do have this specific plant, just to make sure that you're not giving them doubles. But to be fair, most of us with collections, if you give us a plant that's just a double, we're either going to keep it and have two, because multiples, or they're just going to end up trading it for something else, which again will still give them joy. Do not worry your pretty little head about that. It will still give them a lot of joy, and they'll get something that they ultimately want as well. How about something for the bright light lovers? So think about people that have got very bright houses or apartments, or somebody that's going to put it in an office and it's going to be baked in the sun. And again, I'm not going to go for the obvious. I think one of the two options is kind of leaning towards succulent, but at least for the beginners, I'm going to throw a curveball out here, and this is a plant that not a lot of people talk about when it comes to houseplants. And this is one that you could grow as a bit of an annual out in the garden in most countries. And interestingly, if you're growing in the garden, you would give it shade, but in a house you can and it will quite enjoy, especially at this time of the year, some bright light. And that is a lot of the coleus plants. And I'll give you some options here. Stunning plants, can be super easy to keep happy as well. And the color options are insane. This is up there with giving somebody a bunch of cut flowers in terms of the colorfulness. But without it being cut flowers, it is a plant that will keep growing for them and keep rewarding them with these beautiful, stunning foliage that look like it could be a flower. Now for the collectors out there, and this is the one that I was talking about, might lean a bit more into the succulent side of things. And to be fair, they would probably treat this like a bit of a succulent. The Euphorbia tithymeloides, and I'll put the name at the top there. Stunning plant. This one you might need to do a bit of research to see if you can find one. Interestingly, in the UK, this one is one that you might struggle a bit to find. You will probably find it if you search hard enough, but I know a lot of other people around the world, they can find this relatively easily. And this is kind of, I think it's called the devil's backbone, or it's like a rickrack thing. The actual plant itself has like a zigzag stem. It's succulent. You can get green forms. You can get variegated forms. Stunning plant. And I can guarantee you that most collectors probably either have not got this or haven't even heard of this. So this will give you huge brownie points with them if you come up and give them something like this and they'll be like, oh, this is unusual. This is very cool. And it's also a bit of a statement piece, and it loves a bit of bright light as well. So euphorbias are going to be your friend. And how about people, the low light lovers, basically? So think about people, and I can count myself in this as well. When I was still living in London, just before I moved over here, the last apartment that I had in London was a very small and dimly lit apartment. So I didn't have high levels of light. And if I was a beginner at that point and I was kind of getting plants, I'm not going to go out of my way to get something like a grow light. So these are plants that should do relatively well, even in medium to towards low light. No plant will be 100% happy in low light, but towards medium and low light conditions. So a couple of options that I have here for the beginners, and I do apologize because at this stage, this plant is still a bit of a propagation for me. I had a bigger mother plant, but I've also been propagating it like mad. So Paleonias, so this is the Paleonia pulchra. And hopefully, if that is focusing, you should be able to see how beautiful this is. And this will do relatively well and actually prefer more medium towards low light type of conditions. And then I've got another one to show you, again, a Paleonia, but mine's variegated. You might not be able to find the variegated form of this, but the fully green form should be very easy to come across. A Paleonia repens, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Paleonia repens. As I said, mine is a variegated form, but you can see why this is a plant that is very cool, and it will grow quite happily. This grew even in its variegated form, and for the people that don't know about variegation, they prefer to have slightly higher light conditions than the green form would have. This isn't getting primo light by any stretch of the imagination. Absolutely stinking huge. This was less than half the size that it is now a year ago. So Paleonias, by and large, are going to be your friend. Oh, and for the collectors out there, I do have a truly unique plant. I used to have this years ago and I did not give it the right conditions, but I know if you do give it the right conditions, it will do exceptionally well. It is a begonia, and it is the begonia black fang. Very cool, especially if you know that this person might be a bit more kind of gothy, or they like dark things or dark plants. They will love the begonia black fang. It's got cool foliage. It's got that kind of almost serrated type foliage. There's a tiny bit of like fuzz to it as well in terms of like some hairs. And it is just very cool. It's also a bit more on the kind of velvety touch side of things. And this is a plant that, as long as they kind of train it to be happy there, will grow relatively well in medium to low light conditions. So the begonia black fang is a very cool one. With a tiny bit of searching, you should be able to find this. And the collector that you give this to would probably be quite happy with that as a bit of an option. And how about the plant parents out there? These are the individuals that are always on their phone Googling, is this safe for my cat or for my dog in case they kind of eat it? And these are the people that are going to be worried because their beloved furry friend might be eating everything in sight. Or if they've got little humans as well, little kids that are running around, or babies that might be shoving things into their mouths who want things that are not going to be toxic for these people, and they will love you forever for being able to have done some of this research before you present something like this to them. And for the beginners, I would say go for something like a Pilea spruciana. And it is beautiful plant. If I'm not mistaken, it's got a bit of silveriness. I used to have this years ago. I got rid of it because it was just getting out of control. It was so big by the end of it. So this is a plant that can be quite rewarding for them, and also entirely safe for them to have around like their kids and their pets. In case they ingest this plant, this is, as far as I can tell, non-toxic. The caveat to this section is obviously, and to be fair, if the kind of individual's always on their phone Googling whether or not things are safe, do tell them to do their own research if they want, because there might be certain scenarios where there might be an issue, but by and large, the Pilea sprucianum Norfolk basically is considered pet and human safe. Oh, and for the collectors, and again, they might have this or they might not have this, but most collectors, when they do get this in their possession, are bowled over by the beauty of this. And I know this was something that even in the States, they were struggling to get across to get it, but in recent years it has gone kind of everywhere, and this should be one that you should be able to find relatively easily. And for the collectors, don't cringe, it is a calathea, but it is the Calathea mosaica, or the Calathea network. Absolutely stunning leaves, and there is absolutely a guarantee with this one that any individual or collector will not have another plant that will have this type of a leaf pattern on its foliage. Is just absolutely stunning and completely pet and human safe, again, as far as I can tell. And let's wrap up with the last of the archetypes. So this is the thoughtful beginner. So the person who will sit there and do all of the research to make absolutely sure that they are giving their plant the best possible conditions. And again, there's a lot of plants that could fit into this category, but I've selected some of my favorites. Now, for the beginners, I would suggest another prayer plant, and this would be the Tenanthe Burley Marks. This is a plant that I owned, and I know a lot of other people have owned over the years, and has given us an immense amount of joy. And it's on the easier side a lot of the times of the Calathea side of things. It's not going to be the most flashy one that you're going to see out there in terms of coloration, but it is one that will give them that kind of geek out that they're looking for, and they can kind of do their research and see what they need to do to care for this plant and kind of make sure that it's happy without setting them up for failure with it being one of the harder types of prayer plants. So that is one for the beginners, the true beginners. And for the collectors, and in this case, a beginner collector, so they're maybe just starting on their journey of collecting. A couple of options here. I've got one that I prefer more than the other. So you're going to be looking at more of your jewel type orchids. So these are going to be ground dwelling orchids. So there is the Ludicea discolor, which is not my number one choice, but it is something that apparently a lot of people can grow. I have failed growing this so many times. And then there is the other type of jewel orchid, which has got the lightning, and I'm not remembering the name right now, but I will put it at the top there. This for me would be a better option. I have always had much better success with this plant, and for me, much more interesting, visually appealing type of ground dwelling orchid. And yeah, this is going to be something that's going to be a bit of a showstopper for them. They might decide to grow this in a terrarium. I have grown it out in higher levels of humidity. I don't think I've ever grown it in household humidity, but this is one that will definitely give them that joy of kind of reading care and doing all of these things and doing all their research, the jewel orchids. And coming into some final thoughts, a few bits of further kind of tips and advice, or kind of requests almost from me. Try, if you can, to shop local or small businesses. Really look forward to, and local businesses really look forward to this time of the year to kind of make the majority of their earnings that they need in order to survive another year. And I know that might sound a bit bleak, but it is one of those things. A lot of the times the massive, big retailers, big corporations, they don't need your extra money, especially at this time of the year, because they are laughing all the way at the bank, or to the bank. But the small and local businesses will really appreciate your business. And if you are able to go in and talk to some of these individuals, you will get a lot more care and attention given to the advice that they're also going to give you in store, because it is in their best interest to keep people happy and keep people coming back for more. Some bonus kind of gift ideas, and I know that people are going to come for me for this, but get accessories for them as well. Something like a moisture meter. Tell them how to use it. If they don't know how to use it, there are multiple videos online. I think I've even talked about how to use this a few years back now at this point. But the decorative pots that we were talking about earlier on, things like that that might kind of give them a bit of extra to play around with. The care guide, if you're going to go that extra mile and create that personalized care guide for them, is going to be something that's really going to be quite touching for them, because you've given them everything they need in order to have the best tools in order to succeed. Not everybody will, but you've given them everything that you possibly can in order to make it as easy as possible for them to have success with the gift that you've given them. And that's part of it as well. It's not just a thoughtless gift. You've actually put a lot of thought into what you are going to be getting them. But realistically, no matter what somebody's kind of plant archetype or plant personality is, based on what we were talking about before, there is a plant out there for everybody. A plant that will bring and spark joy in most people. It's going to be unique to each individual and their conditions, but I guarantee you there is something out there for them, and you never know. you might be creating a new member of the plant collection crew. And we will be more than welcoming and bring them into the fold, so to speak. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Do let me know if I've missed some of your favorite down below. Actually, before I let you go, let me know if I've missed some of your favorites. If you disagree with me, that's fine. You can disagree with me down below. But if you're going to disagree, give us some other options, especially for those archetypes. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.